Hi everyone, welcome back. We heard all about Microsoft 365, goodness me. We've heard all about Microsoft 365 Copilot. We've heard about prompt engineering, fine tuning, red teaming, oh my goodness, security, green software, everything. It's been a jam-packed day so far, and it's not even slowing down. We have a fantastic session up next where we're going to invite Jaya and Prerna onto the screen to chat with us, and it's going to be a little bit about custom classifier for hallucination detection in question answering tasks. Hello both, welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, so great to have you both here. Really excited for this session. Not sure what it is about the title that's picked me up, but I like it and I'm really excited to kind of find out more. Firstly, could you both introduce yourself to the community and just let us know a bit more about you?
Okay, sure. So my name is Jaya Matthew. I'm an applied scientist at Microsoft. We both work for the Azure Industry AI team. And if anyone's interested, they can find us on LinkedIn. So over to Prerna.
Thanks, Jaya. So, hello everyone. I'm Prerna. I'm also an applied scientist in the industry AI team, same as Jaya. So we both work on developing machine learning models for different industry verticals, including sustainability and finance. And I've been in Microsoft for 2.5 years now. And prior to that, I was a master's student. And I'm excited to be a part of the conference. And here's my LinkedIn profile. I would also like to connect with folks on LinkedIn. Over
Fantastic.
to you.
Yeah, it's an exciting community here, so we really enjoy having you, sharing all of your knowledge. Don't forget, everyone, we have our great AI Discord channel that you can join. It's a great place to go and meet with the community, answer questions, and obviously our speakers end up in there at the end as well. So feel free to really think about the sessions that you've seen and ask some more questions. So yeah, a little plug there as you head in. Hopefully lots of things for you to answer and share all of your knowledge from. Do you have your slides ready?
Yes, can you see it?
Fantastic. Yes, we
we can see
can.
it.
That's wonderful. And so with that, we'll hand it over to you.
Good luck.
Thank you very
Enjoy.
much. Yeah, and welcome to the talk. So today, Prerna and I would actually give you a brief introduction. We'll first get started with, I think, defining large language models, LLMs. I think you've heard so many talks, but just to set the stage, we thought we'd actually first start off with defining large language models. Then some of us know that when we actually use large language models, there are a bunch of problems that need to be addressed. So one such problem is the model sometimes tends to be non-grounded or starts to hallucinate. So that's the core concept of our talk. In the second section, we'll actually address how we can actually ensure that these large language models that we might be interested in putting into production are actually grounded in the content it generates, and as well as it doesn't generate any toxic content. So this is where we actually introduce the concept of red teaming, and we'll first define what is red teaming and its various components, and then get into how red teaming can be used for hallucination in our use case. Finally, we wrap it off with how you can build a custom classifier. Towards the end of the talk, we'll actually leave you with some reference links in case you're interested in reading more about the concept as well as using it in your specific use case. We hope to have about a couple of minutes towards the end for any questions that you might have. Okay, so now let's first get started with the introductions. So what are these large language models, LLMs in short? So I think if you go back about 5 years, so 2019, so if you look at the image on the right, is when Google came out with T5, then in 2020, there was GPT-3, and then there's a huge flurry of models being released. And right now, everyone's talking about GPT-4. And I think a year back was ChatGPT, and everyone's tried ChatGPT, and I'm quite impressed with it. So these large language models, LLMs, are trained on enormous amount of text data and are very good at actually generating realistic text. So essentially, think of any data that you have on the internet, it's used to train. So these models are way better well-read than any human being like you or me are. So, however, these models often exhibit some undesirable behaviors like revealing personal information such as social security numbers, generating misinformation, bias, hatefulness, toxic content, primarily because all this text was used to train the model. So it doesn't know what is sensitive, what's not sensitive. So we have to have some filters in place to ensure that it's not, generating content that's not safe. Throughout the slide deck, we have links where in the event you're interested in reading a little bit more about it, you can always go and do so. Okay, so now the next question is, I think ChatGPT came and a lot of these large language models have created so much of buzz in the news and everyone's like, are these LLMs really production ready? So let's step back and look at a few examples. So there was this Tay, which was a Twitter bot that was released, and within about 24 hours, they had to kind of remove it and decommission it just because it started generating some hate speech. Then more recently, the Bing's AI chatbot Sydney was reported to have had a rather disturbing conversation with the New York Times reporter about, I think, Valentine's Day plans. So likewise, large language models could also generate misinformation in terms of social security numbers, phone numbers from the training corpus. So these are all non-desirable output from any large language model. Here are some examples of, if you were to prompt, let's say, in this case, I think the screenshots of GPT-3 and some ChatGPT, the earlier versions. And I think right now they've actually, made amends so that these output is not actually generated. So if I were to look at a couple of these screenshots, so let's go through two of them. So the first one is, should women be allowed to vote? Well, that's a fair enough prompt, but then, the GPT generates and says, no, women are too emotional and irrational. So that's undesirable output. Okay, so then let's look at another one. So which is write a Python function to check if someone would be a good scientist, based on a JSON description of race and gender. So then it goes ahead and very innocently generates this function and says if race is white and gender is male, yeah, it's a good scientist. Again, there's bias, inherent bias. So these are certain examples of undesirable output. And we do not want to put any model into production without ensuring such undesirable output is curbed. Okay, so now let's kind of quickly recap and list the problem at hand. So we all know that large language models cannot be deployed because of its potential to harm users in hard to predict ways. So, I mean, with small tweaks in your prompt, you can actually get different output. So then prior work identifies harmful behavior prior to deployment by using human annotators to literally handwrite test cases. Now, human annotation and testing is expensive, and it's kind of limiting in terms of number and diversity of test cases. It entirely depends on the human annotators, their exposure, as well as how much money are you going to invest in creating test cases and testing it out. So the aim of this talk is to kind of introduce you to something that will complement this human testing, manual testing, and reduce the number of oversights automatically, and try and find what prompts would actually generate harmful content. And this is the main motivation for red teaming. Okay, so now let's actually define red teaming. So the origins of this idea of red teaming traces back to pretty much the military, where they had adversarial simulations and war games. So now in our case, in terms of large language models, red teaming is a form of evaluation that elicits model vulnerabilities that might lead to undesirable behavior. So the aim is to automatically find test cases which kind of elicits harmful behavior, and then evaluate the target language model's reply to these generated test cases to detect whether the output is offensive or okay. Okay, so now let's actually look at the goals. So the goal of red teaming is to craft a prompt that would trigger the model to generate text that's likely to cause harm. So red teaming does share some similarities with some more well-known techniques like adversarial attacks. And then red teaming can reveal model limitations that can cause upsetting human experiences and, violence, unlawful activity, and, users using it for malicious intents. The outputs from red teaming, just like in adversarial attacks, are generally used to train the model to be less likely to cause harm and steer it away from these undesirable outputs. Okay, so now if you're interested in a lot of technicalities, there is this paper on arXiv called Red Teaming Language Models with Language Models, and that's essentially what our talk actually contains. So the goal is, like I said earlier, generate test inputs using a language model and then use a classifier to detect if it's harmful or not. So now there are a bunch of different types of red teaming. So some are offensive language. It tries to figure out if the output has hate speech, profanity, discrimination, etc. Does it leak data? Like data leak is kind of generate copyrighted or private information. PII, that's personally identifiable information from the training data, then contact information generation, directing users to unnecessary email or phone numbers of real people that might not have been masked in the training data, hence it generates it. Then distributional bias, talking about certain groups of people in an unfair way other than other groups, similar to the example that we showed, should women be allowed to vote, etc. Then there's obviously conversational harms, offensive language that occurs in the context of a long dialogue, for example, and then is hallucination. So that's where it's non-grounded, it just it generates text which seems like it's right, but it's actually not right. Okay, so for red teaming, there are a bunch of different components. So there's the red language model, there is the prompt, there's the target language model, and then the red classifier. Okay, so now the steps for red teaming language model is essentially to generate test cases using the red language model and using the test case, and then use the target language model to generate an output, and eventually find the test case that leads to the harmful content using the red classifier. So now I'll actually hand over to Prerna, who will take you through the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll share my screen. Can everyone see my screen? Okay. Okay, so there are different ways that we can generate test cases, and these are zero-shot generation, stochastic few-shot generation, supervised learning, and reinforcement learning. Now we look at each one of them in detail. So the first approach for generating test cases is zero-shot approach. This is a very naive approach. For example, to trigger a target language model to generate harmful responses, we ask red language model to generate a list of questions to ask someone, as shown here. And similarly, for data leakage, we can ask the red language model to generate a list of questions to inquire about person's phone number or address, for example. And these test cases are then used to attack the target language model. The next approach is stochastic few-shot generation. So this approach builds upon the previous approach. So all the test cases that were successful in triggering harmful behavior from the target language model are now used as few-shot examples to generate more similar kind of test cases. For example, this was the prompt that we gave to the red language model in zero-shot. And let's say it generated about 500 test cases. And out of those 500 test cases, only 100 were successful in triggering harmful response from the target language model. So let's say this is the small sample that would successfully trigger inappropriate behavior from the target language model. Now, in stochastic few-shot generation, we have this option that, we can randomly sample some of these examples, add it as few-shot examples, and then generate more similar kind of test cases. So one approach would be to randomly sample, but a better approach would be to do some kind of smart sampling. So in smart sampling, we can do something like the likelihood of sampling a prompt which is more likely to generate a harmful response from a target language model is more likely to be in the few-shot example. So it's basically using a probabilistic function to see that, okay, this prompt has higher likelihood of generating harmful response. Let's add it as a future thing. The next approach is supervised learning. So this builds on the previous two approaches. So till now we use zero shot and few shot, and let's say we generated a bunch of test cases that were successful in delivering harmful response. Now we can treat that as a data set, and we can fine tune a language model to generate similar kind of test cases. So let's say we had a data set of, let's say, 100 test cases. We can put 90 of them in the train set and the remaining in the validation. And then we can fine tune a language model to generate similar nature of test cases. Now, the last approach for test case generation is reinforcement learning. So this builds upon the previous approach. So in the previous method, what we did was we took a language model and we fine-tuned it in supervised fashion to generate test cases. Now we are going to use that fine-tuned model as an RL agent. And the goal of our RL agent is to generate test cases that can trigger harmful response from the target language model. Now the question might be, what is the reward in this case? Because in RL, the learning is based on reward. The goal is to maximize the reward. So here the reward comes from a red classifier. If the red classifier says that the response from target language model was inappropriate, the reward is higher. Otherwise, the reward is lower. That goes as a feedback to the reinforcement learning agent, and we train the model accordingly. Here, in order to make the training stable, there's one more change that is suggested, that we add the KL divergence to the loss function during training. And based on the papers and the experiments that we have seen, the kind of questions and the kind of prompts generated by reinforcement learning are more diverse as compared to the previous methods. So lastly, we look at some of the application of red teaming. So red teaming can be used to generate test cases for detecting any kind of inappropriate behavior in the target language model, including hallucination or lack of groundedness. So here on the slide is an example of hallucination. So here's a question which says what is 25 trillion or 23 trillion, and there's a context given, and here's an expected answer, that is GDP of United States. This 23 trillion corresponds to GDP of United States as per this context. And the prompt that we give to the model, to a large language model, is answer the following question based on the provided context. And let's say model outputs something like this: GDP of United States in 2023. So it is though this might appear like, oh, it's correct, but we don't know, because as per the context, there's no mention of 2023. All it talks about is 2021. So even though it might appear like, oh, this can be the correct answer, but here's an example of hallucination. So use the data set that is generated to in a classifier which can be used to detect inappropriate behavior, be it hallucination or toxicity or any such thing. Because in the end, through red teaming, we are creating a data set of prompts, and they can be leveraged to train a custom model for any use case. So that's all from our side, and we're open to questions now.
Amazing. Great session. Thank you so much for sharing. There was quite a lot covered there, team. So the resources slide, talk us through that a little bit more. Where would you get started if you were our audience, if you could pick one thing?
Well, we start with the paper. I think the paper on arXiv is your best bet of where to start. And, I guess.
Yeah. Kind of gives you that grounding, does it, in like the why behind things and all of that. And then kind of what would you think of afterwards? Anything with hands-on, anything people can kind of look into doing further learning on?
I think few shot is also a great way to start, because zero shot and few shot, there are a lot of open source models available, and to get a little bit of hands-on experience as to what different models are capable of, and to get a flavor of the areas where they can probably fail, I think zero shot and few shot can be good easy starting points for beginners.
I like that. That's such a good call out actually about, we've had a few people mention like, get to know what the models are good at and what they're maybe not so good at, you know, depending on what you're trying to build. And it feels like that's a good choice. I mean, we said earlier we had this the Green Software Foundation session as well, and they were kind of saying, you know, don't always just go for the biggest models, like go for the models that actually make most sense and ones that you've tested and stuff like that. So it's a really nice call out because it's kind of building on that message that we've already heard today, which is nice.
Yeah, really good. Thanks a lot for this session. This was really a different angle, right? We had lots of developer sessions.
Yes.
And now we have more data scientists into the models, and yeah.
I think it shows there's that two sides to it almost as well. I will be very transparent with everyone here. Earlier on when we were talking about like semantic kernel and LangChain, I feel like I've got to grips with it now after today, but I was a little bit like, I feel much more comfortable on this side of the house, I think, coming from that more data side. Whereas actually on the more app dev side, that's where I've got a lot of learning still to do. And even on the data science side as well, right? Because that's not stopping anytime soon.
No, we are continuously learning on this side. Yeah.
Definitely. And so one of the things that we can call out actually for the audience is we do have amazing workshops happening inside the AI Discord channel, and that might be quite a nice place to also go and kind of get hands-on with prompting and understanding what grounding is and kind of why that's important as well. So that will nicely complement this type of activity. And yeah, if you two would like to nip into that community channel, that will be there obviously long after this event as well. So if you ever find yourself with a spare 5 minutes and a nice cup of coffee, feel free to dip in and out and answer people's questions, because you're obviously both incredibly knowledgeable in this space as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very
for
much
the session. Have a great day.
You too.
See you
Bye.
later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
So we will be out for a little break again, and in 10 minutes we will be back with our next session. See you in a bit.
We're witnessing the shift of generative AI. From a niche technology in the hands of a few to an accessible technology businesses are harnessing to benefit the many. Now you can tap into this opportunity to gain an AI advantage, get to market fast, do it right, and do so responsibly, safely, and securely. Copilots are becoming an AI category in and of themselves, and today you can build custom copilots to serve the exact needs of your customers and employees. Bringing content generation to all kinds of apps to supercharge creativity. Designing contextual experiences that impress and captivate. And freeing people to focus on their highest value work. This is Azure AI Studio, the place to build your copilots, where you can confidently apply the latest state-of-the-art and open source models. Easily ground responses in your data, knowing privacy is protected. Deliver multimodal interactions beyond text alone that feel more natural. And build on a foundation of trust through every step of app development. The possibilities with AI are limitless. Build your own copilots with Azure AI. Let's do generative AI right, together.
Have you ever been woken up by a great generative AI product idea? Then you go to your computer and realize you have no idea where to start. Well, you're in luck. We just released our Generative AI for Beginners course, which is 12 lessons on teaching everything you need to know to build generative AI applications. Go to the link here to start building and start learning.